Good afternoon. Hello. I'm Alberto Fierro, the Consul General of Mexico in Boston, and I'm very pleased to greet you for this new program of conversations with Mexicans in New England. That is part of our public diplomacy program, and that we do in the aim of transmitting to a broad audience the importance of culture and education and the challenges and opportunities that have allowed Mexicans in New England to achieve beyond Mexico. Today, our topic is chocolate, a cultural, historical, and gastronomical staple. And our special guests are José López Ganem, researcher at Fine Cocoa, I don't know how to pronounce it well, you'll tell José, and Chocolate Institute from Harvard University. And Iraiz, sorry that I didn't mention you first, that was a big mistake. Iraiz Valdez, restaurant owner from Acitrón, Cocina, Mexicana. Let me briefly introduce both of them. Welcome and thanks for wanting to participate with us. Iraiz was born in Hermosillo, Sonora, a fantastic northwestern state of Mexico. And there's a lot of Sonora people here in Boston, at least. And she's the owner and restaurant manager of Acitrón Cocina Mexicana in Arlington, Massachusetts. If you haven't visited, please go and visit. She has been working at the restaurant industry for over 15 years, promoting Mexican cuisine in Boston. José is a chocolate expert who does interdisciplinary research on Mexican cacao, drawing on the fields of history, culture, public policy, and trade. His professional experience includes work in cultural and food studies, as well as in the food industry, in which he worked in New York City. He's currently a research fellow at Harvard's Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute. And so today we wanted to speak about something happy, heartwarming, and that everybody would like. So chocolate seemed the best option, even though it's hot, because we're in the middle of the summer. Chocolate can be also a very refreshing drink. And it is a staple in Mexican households, and there is an enormous variety as to how we can consume chocolate. But we don't often think of its true origins or how it is actually regarded outside of Mexico. In New England, for example, or the many perspectives from which we can discuss chocolate. So I would first like to ask José for a brief introduction to the origin of chocolate. We Mexicans boast it as our own, very own. For many other people, when they drink chocolate, they think of Belgium or Switzerland. So what's the truth, José?
Well, thank you, first of all, Alberto, for having me, Iraiz, for joining us. And I would like to say, and to begin, that this question is bringing me closer to having to ask for political asylum to the United States, because it's not a very flattering answer for the Mexicans. So, Alberto, I might be knocking your door after the phone call to kind of kindly ask for consular support. But let me tell you briefly the picture, and this perhaps is my biggest answer, because one of the things that I do most of my job is to start the conversation right here about why Mexico is so prominent as in chocolate parlance. Let's start with cacao, the raw material of chocolate today. It's from the plant that in its nomenclature in Latin is called Theobroma cacao. This plant has its genetic origin in the Amazon basin in South America, meaning the plant sprouted there, it originated there, and through normal and natural mutations, it's made its way across Central America, all the way to the current states in Mexico of Chiapas, Tabasco, Oaxaca, Guerrero, and more. There is an insider baseball conversation today in Mexico, cacao and chocolate professionals saying, well, yes, it might have originated there, but the best genetics naturally sprouted in Chiapas or in Tabasco. That's yet to be seen. There is no academically approved answer to that, but you can see that the Mexican average chauvinist is starting to kind of claim its territory. So now that I have given you the sad picture about cacao not being a naturally endemic plan to Mexico, let me give you the chocolate. And it has a more complex answer than what we might like to imagine. Like, for example, when we talk about champagne in France, or when we talk about certain cheeses in Europe, because it depends on your particular favorite historical picture. For example, if you talk about beverages that are based on cocoa beans or cacao beans, yes, perhaps Mexico was, or the Central American region was the origin for these preparations. But if, for example, we're talking about the chocolate that Alberto or Iraiz might get at Costco or Whole Foods or Walgreens, wherever you get your chocolate fix from, we might not be talking about Mexico being its site of origin. Let me tell you a very brief anecdote that I shared with basically everyone that hears me talk about the topic. When I get to talk through Harvard students a semester-long chocolate course along Dr. Carla Martin here at FCCI and at Harvard, who is the founder of this organization, my favorite time, it's actually the first class where we get to give students the academically sanctioned and approved recipe of the chocolatl, this drink that Moctezuma II offered, among many other things, to the Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés when he reaches Tenochtitlan, today Mexico City, in 1519. Of course, out of the 200 students that we have at any given semester, I will say 195 might make faces of what is this that I'm tasting? It doesn't taste anything like the chocolate I'm used to. Of course, there's always 5 hipsters that really feel connected to the annatto seeds and to the positive energy of that drink. But it doesn't really click with what the flavor of chocolate is today. And just to finish, as I say, then I make an analogy with a cookie shop today, because we're 21 plus. I'm going to make an analogy with a bar, perhaps at Acitrón. I go into Iraiz bar and I sit down and Iraiz, I would like to have a cocktail. Can I have your cocktail list? And she will give me her cocktail list. And, you know, I'm pretty sure there's a paloma, there is a mojito. There might be other more developed drinks, for example, like a Negroni or a Martini. The difference among them is perhaps Acitrón might not be the place where the Martini got created. Perhaps it's the best Martini in New England. But that's what happens when Cortés tastes this drink. He tasted one out of the many drinks existing in Mesoamerica back in the day. So what might we have considered the origin of chocolate in Tenochtitlan? It's really one of the many drinks that we share with our conglomerate friends for Mesoamerica, with El Salvador, with Nicaragua, with Guatemala, back when they were part of Mayan Empire and its subsidiary cultures. So if we are or not the origin of chocolate, what I will say is that Mexico, along Central America and Colombia, can claim that they are the region of the world who has had the most lasting consumption of cacao and chocolate of any other country in the world. The rest, I'm not gonna discuss any further because I'm pretty sure I'm angering some of my brothers and connationals back in Mexico.
I don't think so, or not necessarily, Jose. It is true that it is part of Mexican, at least a version of it is a Mexican product that is given to the world, and it is through Mexico that for the first time Europe knows about chocolatl. Yeah. So that Brazilians cannot claim, nor Central American. That is a total Mexican thing. So before we pass with Iraiz and what she does and how she uses chocolate, Jose, just tell us a little bit of how did you become interested in chocolate, and how has this journey brought you to Boston? What has your experience been as a Mexican expert in this region? And tell us a little bit about your annual festival.
Oh, well, I love
that
to
I
share.
Guess this year we won't be having, but or maybe through Zoom and distance means.
Well, thank you for asking. And I will say that this is an invitation for you all. Of course, I'll talk to Iraiz later on to see how we can continue to exhibit the cacao and chocolate culture of Mexico throughout New England. Not this year, but the following, we will have Mexico as our guest for the New England Chocolate Festival. So it's just a brief pause. I got to be here at such a prominent university like Harvard, collaborating through the Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute, because I was a food professional like Iraiz, but unlike Iraiz, I didn't have the go to kind of stayed in the food service. It's a very demanding industry. And what I did was kind of the elegant exit of becoming an academic. I think Iraiz kind of testified for that. I see her smile, and I think she knows exactly what I'm talking about. But I continued my path because at a moment where I was making my decision, I was collaborating with a research led by CONACYT and the Department of Agriculture of Mexico, of our country. And I engaged FCCI as part of that program, the Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute. At the end of that program, the director of FCCI kind of kidnapped me gently. She offered me a position in such a prominent university, I couldn't say no. And since then, I call her my boss, but she insists on calling me a colleague and a friend, and it has been such an interesting part. About how do I feel being a food researcher in New England, I feel very lonely. I am certainly the most interesting of all person in all my friend groups. You know, here we have pharmaceuticals, mathematicians, engineers, and I kind of bring the light among my group because I don't know how to make an addition, or I don't know anything about organic chemistry, but I certainly know what to do after 6 p.m. when they leave work. I would like to say that food studies is it's an under-respected discipline. Certainly, we're not sending anyone to the moon, but if we humans share something all the time, is food. And we eat alone or with people, we certainly have an interaction daily with the staple. And understanding what we eat is practically what we do through the class that we have or we host at Harvard, is what we do through the Institute. Is almost like instead of having a class that could be named How to Get Away with Murder, we name our class How to Get Away with Fine Dining, and socializing that type of learning with prominent figures that pass through Harvard today or pass through Ivy Leagues around New England. It's something important because they will be the economical engines of an industry as a whole.
And tell us just briefly about your festival.
I'm sorry, I forgot about I got excited about influencing people on how to eat. My apologies. Every year we host a community engagement festival here in Boston, Massachusetts, called the New England Chocolate Festival, which we were in its second edition back in 2016. We normally host it every October. This is often a 2-day engagement where we have educational opportunities and highlighting through a pavilion the different chocolate offerings around New England and abroad. We will not have it this year, just we're taking a pause from it and approaching research more densely, but next year we hope to be back in the city of Boston and perhaps in other places in New England to bring the best of chocolate making in New England, and in this case our guest country back in 2019 was the Dominican Republic, and we hope that in 2021 it's Mexico.
And I understand that your festival is massive. I wasn't able to be there last year, but that you do receive hundreds of thousands of people.
We have been very lucky to get 2,000 so far. So fingers crossed, we will be able to get as many next year.
Okay, well, that's a lot. And Iraiz, I was mentioning that this week there was a very interesting article in the New York Times related to a Mexican chef in Washington who did a PBS program on Sonora and food. And you have read it and you know what it is about. I've been very impressed here in New England that the few Mexican restaurants I've been to, most of them are from Sonora. So tell us about how you got here. What have been your biggest challenges to overcome here in New England, and what part of your challenge and was related to Mexican gastronomy and wanting to showcase the fantastic meals from your home state in Mexico?
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you, Consul Alberto. Thank you, Jose, for sharing this stuff with me. And thanks to all the people who worked together to put this talks, because I know you've been doing different talks with different people. So it's been nice for everybody. We're learning a lot through this talk. So I appreciate what you're doing for the Mexican community. So first of all, I'll start with the meaning of Acitrón. So Acitrón, what we most know as biznaga in the state of Sonora, means it's crystallized cactus, which it's my favorite ingredient in the rosca de Reyes. So
Me
the
too.
rosca, yeah, the rosca de Reyes, that's what we eat every year to celebrate my birthday. I was born on the Three Wise Men Day. So it is a very sweet and very meaningful ingredient in my life. So we decided to call it Acitrón. That was one of the reasons why we called the restaurant Acitrón. So, well, I think in terms of challenges, as many people, when we first come to this country, the first challenge that we face, it's definitely the language. But I was lucky enough because when I first came, I became a server right away. So I started interacting with people and practicing my English. So that was just fascinating for me, very fascinating for me, because, you know, just I always loved the idea of interacting with people. So that was very good for me to practice my English and to communicate. And then, you know, another challenge would be the weather. As you mentioned before, I come from the Sonora Desert. So the weather was a big challenge the first few days. And then we face the food issue. You need to eat. So that's one of that's when finally you realize you're actually kind of screwed. Because, you know, back then, I came here in 2004, so it's been almost 17 years, and there were only a few Mexican restaurants in the whole Boston area. I don't know how many there were in the whole New England, but in the Boston area, there were only very few. I could probably count them with my two hands, and that's it. So the demand of the Mexican ingredients were not as high as nowadays is. Now you can find almost every ingredient thing you can think of. I found epazote the other day, fresh epazote. I got very excited. You can find those things that, you know, there is always Mi Salvador Mexicano, La Oaxaqueña, Tesoro. Yes, in the beginning, in 2011, when we first opened Acitrón, almost 10 years ago now, people in New England were not very familiar with Mexican cuisine. So it was like, it wasn't New England, it wasn't like California, that they have Mexicali food, or Texas, where they have Tex-Mex food. So the idea of opening Acitrón was to bring recipes from different regions of our beautiful Mexico. Like the cochinita pibil from Yucatan, chiles en nogada from Puebla. We make our own tortillas, Sonora style. So that's one of our big things. Not just the typical burrito, tacos, fajitas, enchiladas. I mean, there is nothing wrong with these dishes, you know, they're good, they're really good. But we, as I said before, we just wanted to bring some other recipes. We didn't even have, when we first opened, we didn't even have the typical chips and salsa on the table. So people didn't like that. We didn't have burritos, you know. And then whenever we told people, oh, we don't have burritos, we don't have the chips and salsa, they will look at us and they will be like, how can you call this place a Mexican restaurant? So it was kind of funny and shocking for us to get those reactions. But we understood that basically there was not much of education on terms of Mexican food in the area. And besides all of what I've said, don't take me wrong, there were a few Mexican restaurants and they were good, they were very good. But what I'm trying to say is that maybe there were not enough to reach a good level of education in Mexican food. So I remember in the beginning, we had a wonderful chef from Mexico City. He actually ended up leaving us because he got frustrated that people would make all kind of comments without even giving him a chance to prove them wrong and demonstrate that Mexican food from different regions with different recipes, you know, are just delicious. So that was definitely a big challenge to understand what was going on with the clientele that we were getting, you know, and it definitely was the biggest challenge for me. Because, you know, I'll be honest, I worked in restaurants for many years, and I did almost every single position in a restaurant. But I never had to actually be in charge of a whole kitchen. So what I did is I started ordering books, subscribed to different magazines, and I started cooking and experiment and learn how the ingredients will taste. And after a couple of years of non-stop, it was just work every day, every day, every day. My husband, Gotu, and I finally kind of started taking breaks and traveling a little more to Mexico. And he's always been very passionate about people, music, and food. So it's been a great inspiration for me because, you know, he's from India and he learned the whole culture, the Mexican culture. He learned the language. And I have to say that he's been a great inspiration for me because, you know, he knew in the beginning, he knew way more than me about Mexican food. I mean, about the culture in general. So I have to read and learn a lot to keep up with his knowledge. So I'll say we've done a good duo. He's the smart and artistic person in the team, and I'm the cook and the better organizer and the better manager in terms of managing the restaurant. So as I said before, we've been traveling a little more to Mexico, interacting with Mexican chefs. And that's how I really learned the kitchen job. You know, it was just definitely a combination of all of what I have already mentioned and the necessity and obligation of keeping up with the business. And I think of saying, like, give your heart for what you really want to do in life. So that was a big clue for me. And then in terms of another challenge, it's been now, like what we're living these days, it's COVID-19. Just imagine you're having a whole team working with you, and suddenly you have to let go like half of the people. It was really sad in the beginning. I mean, eventually most of them came back, but the uncertainty is still there. We don't know what's going to happen in the next few months, but for the 3 months that we had to close the restaurant for the patrons to come in, we always stayed open for takeout and delivery. My husband and I had to work every day. We had no days off, and it was very tiring, but we had to save the business so we can generate a few jobs whenever things come back to normal. We definitely have done a lot of changes to our menu through all this year, and we have adjusted to what we have become. We feel like we kind of found our sweet spot, making a balance with people's demand and what we want to deliver. So we try to bring people the experience of a simple and delicious meal with a beautiful presentation, which is very important for us. And the best part, that we try to bring different flavors from different regions. And recently we added, besides all what I just mentioned, we added a nice little patio, as Jose mentioned, you know, and that's just nice little place that has fulfilled my heart. I love it. And it's definitely a plus for the restaurant.
Great. Well, this is really an invitation to go and visit Acitrón, Iraiz. Thank you. And I think you've mentioned the challenge of understanding what is expected of a Mexican food restaurant, the challenge of you as a Sonoran to not only cook the food of Sonora, but to incorporate the other many regions. As we know, there are many Mexican cuisines, and they are based on the milpa products, but they do change by regions. So it's fantastic that you've been able to bring a little bit of Yucatan, a little bit of Puebla, etc. And then, well, we know how rich also the gastronomy of India is, and in many things it's very similar to ours. They have their own moles that are called curries. So it's interesting how you've been able to do that.
So yes, my husband always says that Indian food is the best, and I always tell him, yes, honey, that's why we own a Mexican restaurant, and you eat Mexican every day. So
you could always think of later opening the Indian next door, and then we could hop from one to the other.
Yeah,
right.
Or then do a combination. So, but we're supposed to go back to chocolate because that's part of the program today. So in its gastronomical aspect, the range of ways in which chocolate can be enjoyed is enormous, from a simple chocolate bar to its inclusion in complex dishes like mole. Jose, what can you tell us about the versatility of this small bean? And Iraiz, what is your experience when you tell an American patron that they can have tamales de chocolate or a mousse or an ice cream or a chocolate drink, or that their mole con pollo also has chocolate?
Go ahead, Jose.
Iraiz, well, I hope that I do justice and be precursor to your answer, which I'm really hoping to hear what you do, because this is often what other people ask me about Mexican chocolate. So Iraiz, I'll speak very shortly, but one of the things that I think sells more about the diversity of foods that Iraiz was speaking about, specifically when we look at chocolate. For example, if we measure the distance between Tijuana, the bordering city of Mexico, with the California city of San Diego, all the way to Chetumal, the capital of the state of Quintana Roo, where Cancun is, so we make it a little bit more popular for the American audience listening to us today, which is bordering with the country of Belize, is the same distance between Moscow and Madrid. And you know, we all know, for example, the cuisine of France, the cuisine of Italy, the cuisine of Germany, the cuisine of Poland, the cuisine of Spain. Well, that all of those regions exists in Mexico. So look at the diversity of climate, at the diversity of production. And chocolate happens within that range. And I would just like to say that compared to other staples recent or past that Mexico has gotten from abroad, for example, coffee, and for example, vitis vinifera for wine, those are recent acquisitions of the Mexican agricultural skype. You can only put coffee in a cup and perhaps on a dessert. You can only put wine in a glass and perhaps in a sauce. Iraiz will guide us better as the versatility of those ingredients. But what can you do with a cocoa bean? If you have cocoa made into chocolate, for example, you can do a champurrado in the streets of Mexico City, or you can have a street food snack or a street food drink in Tabasco. For example, a pozol, which is a beverage made with corn, with water, and with ground cacao nibs. But if you go all the way to the other extreme, you can shape chocolate into your favorite holiday. You can shape it into your favorite Santa Claus. You can shape it into a pumpkin. You can, as Alberto was saying, you can shape it, for example, into a mousse, or you can shape it into a tamal. So the versatility is plentiful when we refer to chocolate. And just to give a sense, the three of the staples that I just mentioned, they are in Mexico. We have excellent coffee, we have excellent cacao, of course, exceptional chocolate, and I think up and coming, but very close to its California peers, excellent Mexican wine.
Thank you, Jose. And Iraiz, tell us about your use of chocolate in your restaurant and in your cuisine.
Well, Jose is a chocolate expert, and I'll talk about my chocolate in our kitchen. So yes, as Jose just mentioned, chocolate, it's been a Mexican staple ingredient forever. And yes, it's very nice and easy to grab a chocolate bar and eat it. But when you mix this ingredient in your kitchen, it can definitely just blow your mind away. Starting with the simple cup of hot chocolate to the very complex mole poblano or mole oaxaqueño. Mole poblano with his 26 ingredients, but chocolate is one of the main ingredients, so it's just something else. So when we first opened Acitrón, as I mentioned before, the Arlington community wasn't very familiar with Mexican food, especially with moles. And they will come to the restaurant, read the menu, and most of the time they will make a face of chocolate with chicken, and that sounds weird kind of thing. So then we will give them an explanation of how moles are a piece of art because of the ingredients and the process of developing these recipes. And we will always make sure that we told people that we don't use just any kind of chocolate, that we use Mexican chocolate. And most of the people will get very excited about the food and try it. But some people will definitely make the face and leave it for the next time. But nowadays, like, people are definitely more educated, and mole poblano is one of the most sold dishes in Acitrón. What happens now is that people have traveled to Mexico more. They have learned more about our culture, our food. And so they're more familiar with moles and all these recipes, and they feel more comfortable about trying these fabulous recipes with Mexican chocolate and chicken. And I mean, that's just an example. But also the Mexican community has grown in New England, and there are many more Mexican restaurants around and more Mexicans to share our culture. So that's been great help. Usually we have some specials over the weekends. In winter time, I'll make some hot chocolate. I always like to make hot chocolate over the weekends. And we use the Mexican tablets. Then we top we make the tamal de chocolate. That's something that we have the whole year round. You know, tamal de chocolate is just an explosion of Mexican chocolate taste. We mix the corn with the cocoa. We use the Mexican tablets, and we make a mix of 3 different milks. And we put a scoop of Mexican vanilla ice cream. So yes, the vanilla beans are Mexicans. We don't make the ice cream ourselves, but we also try to promote that we don't make it, but we have a local company who makes it for us.
Is that one of your signature dishes?
Yes, the tamal de chocolate is definitely one of most of the tamal de chocolate and the mole poblano. You know, it's just a lot of work. So we try to always explain people what's the process, so they understand. As I said before, it's not just a piece of food; it's a piece of art. You know, so it's always nice to explain people so they understand where we come from. And also we have a dessert drink. We have the chocolate martini made with Mexican coffee and Mexican chocolate. In fact, I put a table together for people to see very quickly. If you allow me to do so, I'll show you real quickly over here.
We're going to offer us a martini.
We were talking about cocktails before.
So I got all the ingredients here, and I got a mole there. I just wanted to show you how you can find all these ingredients. It's not that difficult anymore, but we'll go to the part later.
And this is the favorite way of Iraiz to torture people, is showing her delicious food and then telling her they cannot have it.
It's that. So now, you know, like, people are welcome to come to a restaurant anytime they want. So we're here. So that's what it is.
Now, in economical terms, Jose, would you say there is an important chocolate trade between Mexico and the US? Is Mexico still an important producer of chocolate, or have we become a very special small niche amongst all the world offering?
This is a question that keeps me awake at night. And just to link it with Iraiz's use of cuisine and use of chocolate in her cuisine, we can see that there is certainly a relationship between Mexico and chocolate, but unfortunately that might not translate necessarily to an economical gain for Mexico. Between Mexico and the United States, there is certainly trade between them both of chocolate and cacao. But just to give you guys an idea of a simple numeralia, in Mexico, we have an estimated production of 18 to 20 metric tons of cacao. You don't need to know what a metric ton is, but just picture the number 18 and 20. And the internal chocolate industry need for cacao, it's about 140,000 metric tons. So taking the tons away, and if you do the simple arithmetics, you can see that it's very reduced. We're talking about thousands and thousands of metric tons in deficit. So a lot of the cacao that goes into Mexico to make up for the deficit comes from other places, from South America, from Africa, and from Southeast Asia. But definitely there is an economic opportunity, and this is the idea of the million that I get tired of saying to any Mexican Americans here in the United States, or even to Mexicans in Mexico, that just as our national anthem, when we sing, there's a soldier in every son, there's a chocolate consumer in every member of our culture, of our diaspora here in the United States. There is someone who has a relationship to chocolate, just like Iraiz showed to do, just as I mentioned, the huge diversity of the uses of chocolate. It can be a drink, it can be a dish, it can be savory, it can be sweet. And Mexico can hugely capitalize on the memorabilia that exists today in the American mind of what chocolate is. Today, you go into a cafe anywhere around the United States, a specialty coffee, or just a normal Starbucks, and you will see Mexican hot chocolate. We do have a place in there, and I will not say they might not be a physical trade of assets of cacao, or they might not be a physical trade of chocolate, but Mexico certainly is exporting its culture to the United States and has yet to claim the capital that generates for people in the United States.
Thank you, Jose. Iraiz, you were mentioning before that now it is a lot easier to find Mexican produce and products than 13, 15 years ago.
Right.
What are the biggest obstacles for you? Well, now that you found the pasote, maybe that might have been one of the most difficult obstacles. So you're maybe done with that, but would you share us a little bit? I know that you can import from Florida, flor de calabaza, that is not that, or with la coche, but what is your experience?
Well, the flor de calabaza, we can actually get it here fresh from the local farms, but with la coche, that's one thing that we haven't found that still comes in a can. But I think most of the stuff that we get, it gets first delivered to New York, and from there it gets distributed to the rest of New England. So yes, sometimes it is a little difficult to get some stuff, but you can almost find everything these days. You will find, I'll say an obstacle in this area will be as any other product that you can get. If we have a snowstorm that the trucks cannot get to Boston for some reason. But one thing I will say, yes, you can find almost everything except for different types of fresh corn, what we know as nixtamal or hominy corn in New England, unless you buy it in a can, frozen or dried. We don't get the nixtamalized one. which is the best. And that's when we have the biggest challenge pleasing the Mexican patrons in our restaurant. So as I said, we get everything. We'll get everything, but it might not be the taste. It's a little different. So I'll say even the produce, we'll get most of the produce, but I'll say this, next time when you go to Mexico, make a sauce, put it in a can, bring it back to Boston, make the same recipe, follow the same recipe, and you will see how the taste is so different. So what I mean is even the soil where we plant our vegetables, it has a lot to do with putting a recipe together. It's not just any vegetables. And I'm not saying that the produce here is bad. It's just a different taste, you have different sources and the product will become different.
And that's one challenge that you didn't mention is how to work with those materials, that produce, in order to find it to taste as Mexican as possible. No.
Right, exactly. So that's one of the challenges because, sorry.
I was going to put an example that avocados here now, you can get many and they're all Mexican and they're very good, but they rarely taste the same as a Mexican avocado that you buy in Mexico.
Right. Yeah. Even I'll give you an example. Here, I have this fresh corn, which was frozen because that's all what we get, but it's not even Mexican. This comes from Peru. So this is what we use to make tamales sometimes, and we'll try to mash it the best that we can, but it won't taste the same. We know that, but just like Acitrón, I'm sure the rest of the Mexican restaurants, especially the family-owned restaurants and around this area, we make our best to try to deliver the best product, the best recipes that we can for people. And sometimes it's very frustrating, but we seriously try our best. So when it comes to chocolate, to Mexican chocolate, we have this issue that there isn't an artisan Mexican chocolate store that you can say, okay, let's go to the store and get some chocolate. You have to look for it wherever you can. And if you're lucky, you will find it in the first place you go, but that doesn't mean you'll find enough to feed a whole restaurant for a whole month. So it's kind of difficult. So in conclusion, you will find almost everything, as I say. It might not be the worst quality, but nor the best. So when it comes to chocolate, you'll find the popular brands, Abuelita, Ibarra, but not many of the artisan ones.
Okay. Well, thank you again, both of you, Iraiz and Jose, for sharing with us your experience. And to close up, tell us which is your favorite way to enjoy chocolates.
Iraiz, please, you go first.
I'm not too sure. Got some stuff to eat here, but I'll show you this. So we have the reaction when in the beginning of the reaction of people on the tamal de chocolate will be like tamal de chocolate, and then they try it and it's like, oh wow. Then we have obviously the delicious mole poblano, and I do make the mole oaxaqueño myself once in a while. But honestly, you have to have some respect for recipes. So you gotta try to do them the best way you can. Otherwise, don't even try them. So I don't like to compromise what we offer in a restaurant. So sometimes it will take me fair enough time to remake this mole. But I'm in the process of making one now. So hopefully this weekend we'll have the mole ready by Friday. Mole oaxaqueño.
Wow.
But chocolate is chocolate. We can eat it in many different ways, and I definitely like our ice cream a lot. It's
have you ever thought,
chocolate, Mexican beans, so it's good.
and have you ever thought of doing the mole madre like other chefs do, that there's a base and then you feed it kind of like the bread also?
Yes, I have thought about it, but as I said, you have to have the respect for your cuisine and the recipes, and you need time. And you know, as a small business, sometimes we have too much on our backs and our hands, so you can't compromise what you serve. So you stick to whatever you're doing and slowly keep progressing in different things.
Okay. Thank you, Iraiz.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to trying more of your chocolate recipes. Jose, what is you must eat chocolate every day. You look like you.
Unfortunately, I do. I think my doctor is against my job at a certain point. I think he tells me that for the sake of my life, I need to retire early. But one of the things that I think goes a long way is give me a shout out to the local brands that work with Mexican culture, with Mexican cacao beans. We have a local chocolate maker, Good Now Farms, that works with cocoa beans from Tabasco. It's really rare to see. Now you know the real numbers of cacao production in Mexico, that it's Good Now Farms. We also have our local Taza chocolate that works with no beans from Mexico, but pay homage to the way we normally manufacture chocolate in the mills in Oaxaca City, that have a huge amount of collections in their desks. Those are certainly my favorite because I like eating local. I like enjoying the dishes from, for example, Iraiz. I like enjoying things that come from a place that I know. But I have to confess myself as a millennial here, because I truly enjoy milk chocolate. The one we were talking about, Belgium and Switzerland, certainly they don't have a millenary tradition of chocolate, but as a millennial raised on corn syrup, that I will send you the emails of my parents to complain about why I ate so many sweets as a kid. I do find myself occasionally enjoying some M&Ms or some peanut butter cups. I know this is me outing myself here to you guys. Because it's in a way counterproductive to the Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute. One day I'm going to appear in the cover of People magazine, probably in Espanol, saying, busted, the Fine Cacao and Chocolate Institute eats milk chocolate that it's from a big manufacturer. But oh well, better say it myself than others.
Well, the Consul of Mexico also likes chocolate. So one at 5 o'clock, one peanut butter cup at 5 o'clock is just...
Now I know what to send. Now I know what to send to the consulate.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all the viewers for taking the time to be with us. And Iraiz, Jose, and Jamie, thank you so much for being with us today and for producing this fantastic show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.